tem viajado muito. Você tem trabalhado muito pelo mundo todo, fazendo workshops, trabalhando com atores. Quais as principais diferenças? Existem grandes diferenças entre atores de diferentes países?
You have been working a lot around the world, traveling a lot, doing the workshops. So what are the main differences between the actors? Are there differences between actors in each country?
Right. Yes. There is, but you know, there's a lot of crossover. I'll see somebody in Brazil who reminds me of an actor in France or Norway. You know, there does tend to be there are tendencies. The French actors come closest to what Stanislavski was talking about when he talked about the French actor, which was they almost do what he wanted in terms of being organic, but not quite. But they go in that direction, and I found this to be true with French actors. The thing with them is they're very motivated and very disciplined, and they'll work on a problem 95 different ways until they solve the problem. The problem is that they didn't solve it organically. They just found a very believable, on the surface, way of getting through that difficult moment. And they worked it and worked it and worked it and came up with something clever, but it's still not organic. However, the rest of the time they are pretty organic. And what I work on with the French a lot is to say that moment, you got to understand organically in terms of the character's real impulses, where it comes from. You can't solve it by just trying to figure it out mentally, right? The Germans tend to be very, very mental and intellectual, which is a problem. Yeah. The Germans tend to be, you know, very intellectual, although they have this streak in them that loves things like things about blood and, you know, horrible shit. They're very into that for some reason. And guilt, of course, which is understandable. But in the end, they're extremely disciplined. You know, they show up 5 minutes before I get there, they're already in the seats waiting. You know, unlike Brazil or Italy. And in the end, they turn out to be pretty excellent actors, I have to say, in Germany. Not everyone, but a lot. Very good. I always have a good time in Norway because they have a kind of interesting combination of naivete and sophistication, which is, you know, they're sort of on the edge of Europe, so they have European sophistication, and yet they're on the edge, so they have a little bit of Wild West sensibility at the same time, you know, so they start out with sort of cliched ideas, but they're very willing to throw them out and do something absolutely wild. And in the end, they have continued, a certain group, like 6 workshops with me, over and over. They get obsessed, and then their work they're doing now is fantastically good. Just amazing. So I have a lot of fun with them. And the thing that's so much fun is at first they're like shocked, like, what? Do that? And then they go, okay. And then they do it, and it's fantastic. Brazilians, I'm sure you want to hear about. Very passionate. I think that's the most passionate. Move very well. Not all, but when they're, you know, when they've done their samba classes, Brazilians tend to move better than anybody else. And they do have such a musical sense. You know, you guys. These things are, to me, the raw elements of a good actor. So I'm very, I really like working with that. Sometimes Brazilian actors are, I don't know what it is in the training, but quite naive. It's like in my workshops, most of the students, new students, come in and they either want to do Hamlet or Juliet. And it's like they've never acted before, or they've acted one semester or something, or even one year. You don't do Hamlet or Juliet. You know, try something a little simpler, please. You know, but they have these, and people tell me, oh, but that's in the schools. They train them to do that. They start at the top. They start with, you know, Othello, with Lear, with even something 50 years older than they're 20 years old and they want to do somebody 70. You know, so this I find kind of like, okay, we got to get them out of that. But and then there's the veteran actors I've worked with, people like Stenio Garcia, Julia Gam, and even some of the newer ones like Barbara Paz, who's, I know she came in the reality show thing, but let me tell you, she's very good. Very, very good. You know, and some others who are just wonderful, wonderful actors here. After they've, you know, worked and been through some training, and, you know, this is some great talent. So, Bruce Gomlewski, if you know, yeah. So yeah, I'm pretty impressed. But I think what's great about Brazil, I was talking to Inez today about this, was it's kind of more open than Europe. Europe, you know, you still have to be from the right family to get into the right theater and have been with the right director and the right this and the right that. And if you're just somebody from the street who's not connected, it's really difficult to have a career there, even though you're a wonderful actor. So I see people getting very frustrated, people who should be working, who don't get a chance, and other people who, just because of family connections, are working all over the place. I know that happens everywhere in the world. It happens in America too. But Brazil seems to have less of that. You know, a girl who was getting me coffee for the workshop assisting last year is now starring in one of your soap operas, prime time. So that can happen in a year in Brazil, it seems to me. You know, and I think that's great. I really think that's wonderful, because these older societies, they suppress so much talent, and I'm sure it's not just in acting. It's probably in doctors, lawyers, everything. If you're not from the right family, it's harder. And I think that's terrible. You know?
Você acha que a falta de tradição teatral nas Américas, Norte e Sul, podem ajudar nessa busca de uma coisa mais próxima da espontaneidade, da autenticidade?
Do you think the lack of a theatrical tradition in the Americas, North and South, can help us find a new, what was it?
Espontâneo.
A new spontaneous kind of theater?
I think it already has. I think it is, and it has. I think a lot of very exciting cinema and theater has come out of the Americas, North and South, because of what you're saying, because they're not so tradition bound. Certainly, in America, a lot of movies after World War II in the 1950s, 1960s started to break a lot of old patterns. The acting, Marlon Brando, James Dean, all of these, you know, people from our tradition, the method actors, became much more spontaneous, much less classical, more exciting, more modern, more in the moment. It's obviously true in music, both from North and South. I mean, other than England, what music comes out of Europe? ABBA from Sweden? Come on, right? I mean, not that they don't have good music in Fado in Portugal or whatever, in Spain. I mean, it's good music, but is it exciting? Is it new? Is it... No, the best music comes from Brazil and the United States. I mean, way before I ever traveled to Brazil, I saw Milton Nascimento in concert 3 times in America. I just love him. You know, all the musical developments in Brazil, and they took American jazz and made it Latin. You know, I mean, and stuff from Africa. It's the place where things are new and are spontaneous and do happen. And, you know, it's true in America and in Brazil, and a little less so, I think, in the Spanish-based countries, because they are a little more tradition-bound, I think. Mexico, there's some new, but but not as much. It tends to be more of an operatic kind of theater. Same with Argentina. But in general, yeah, I think the New World in general is much more spontaneous. Europe has a lot to learn from us.